This is the Brooklyn Rail's 817th new social habitat, we're calling it today. It's our 136th Wednesday reading. And today we have Courtney Bush, who's curated a wonderful, wonderful group for you and me and all of us. And it's called Happy Birthday to My Sister Who Has Never Read a Poem. And we have Courtney, Jameson Fitzpatrick, Elisa Gonzalez, and Jack Underwood today. So thanks so much, Courtney, and you all for joining. And I will introduce Courtney. So poet and filmmaker Courtney Bush is from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. She lives and works as a nanny in New York. She is the author of Isn't This Nice? Every book is about the same thing, and I Love Information, a 2022 National Poetry Series selection forthcoming in this year from Milkweed Editions. Her films, made with collaborators, have been screened at festivals internationally. And I just wanted to pull out a sort of couplet or triplet from a poem of Courtney's in the 2020 issue of The Rail to throw us back. She writes, one poem says, TV is what the night eats, writing is what the dreams eat. My growing concern was that the instant was not the unit of experience that interested me. Thank you so much, Courtney.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Anselm, who's not here right now, but thank you, Anselm, Brooklyn Rail. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. And yeah, thank you, Jameson, Elisa, Jack. Y'all are some of my favorite writers. I'm so excited to hear you read. So I'm going to read two poems. I'm going to start with the title poem from my book that's coming out in August. Also shout out, it's my sister's birthday, Geminis everywhere, love you. Okay, I'm gonna start with a title poem from my book that's coming out in August. It's called I Love Information. If you're hewing the stone, it goes pomegranate, dove, pomegranate, dove. I've been watching my boyfriend watch Piero Le Fou, and I'd like to prolong the experience of measured green tones in the dark on the contour of his cheek. Pomegranate, dove, lion, palm, capital, chapter, column, harp. I want to know how to build the tabernacle. Who had daughters, who had sons? Gold letters announce the wrestlers. Ropes describe the circle. My friend witnesses a non-consensual exorcism in her living room. Steals herself in the doorway of her bedroom because the one assumed to host the demon appears to have died under the forceful grip of the recently baptized. She saw the video, attended the brunch, bought a clump of daisies, sewed jewels into her clothes like a Romanov duchess, dropped the spoon in Brighton Beach, where I went once but was too high to sit down. I like being told the plot by a friend. I like being sung a song on the spot, words the children are learning. Pistol, stamen, what Brittany had for breakfast, rye, sourdough, avocado, scallion. And I will tell them whatever they want to know when they swing the light around my head, my hands on the folding table, betta fish in glass orbs next to Ziploc bags of neon gravel, ritual bath indicating the purity of beginning. But this one is drinking whiskey from a red frosted tumbler under the crown molding painted red, sending a text about her own desperation with the necessary provisional belief that this time the words will do something they can't. Razor falling on tile. He said, she said, TV isn't working to its full potential with color, but I watch the Ozark pilot like it's a painting. I'd dedicate my life to any chronicle if I thought it could be complete. An undercover Russian officer at the bottom of the stairs writes about who goes up them, knows they will come down. It's not you, it's me. I heard a man on the Upper West Side say, more like a character than a person, into his phone. I am suffering and I am looking up for someone to reach down to help me. They are there and sort of paying attention, but I can't get them to understand. I'm afraid the path I'm on without help, if I continue, is going to destroy me. I said hello to the doorman and went to work. The implication that nonfiction is supposed to be useful stems from the implication that information is supposed to be. A painting is better proof. A song is the best proof, but you can't be sure they exist unless one is happening. You hand things to each other, go to work, sell copiers. Night recognizes these people are vulnerable, lets them rest. Some events like dreams on a roller coaster with two famous football players, watching the director of that movie walk into the park between decorative concrete spheres. My teacher said, be careful, you are veering into the conceptual. If you write about boring things, it's going to be boring. Pomegranate dove, scientific method by way of Elvis fans who cannot be wrong because there are so many of them. Permission to shoot starlings. God turned time back only 10 degrees. My husband emerged from his studio wild-eyed, pupils dilated from the dark, paint-thinning chemical fumes, rolled cartoon-like across the floor. My therapist keeps saying I'm normal because I keep telling her I'm not. Pomegranate dove, Christmas ornament. I said, I don't want to be crazy about the circle. I don't want its center to be everywhere. I'm probably not washing my strawberries properly. There is no good ending but a prophet or the kind of person who never dies. And then I'll read one more poem, and I'm very excited to read this poem. I've never read it before, except I've read it to the person it's for before. Okay, so this is called the Suzanne Vega joke poem. It was late and we were still awake when we lived together on Myrtle Avenue, and he put on a Suzanne Vega record, Tom's Diner, and asked me if I was ready. Ready for what? But he didn't answer, closed his eyes and began to move. He turned and spun, let his arms flail, and Suzanne Vega sang her monotone. I am sitting in the morning at the diner on the corner. She sang, I am waiting at the counter for the man to pour the coffee. Boring words and one unchanging melody, and the words remained boring, but Jameson was dancing, twirling and feeling the dance and shining in our bare living room. And I couldn't take it. I yelled at him, you literally look religious. You look amazing. Why would you ever dance this way to Tom's Diner by Suzanne Vega? I responded to myself as always, out loud. Oh, of course you would dance this way if these lyrics described an experience you had lived, boringly but word for word at a diner, thinking nothing of it maybe a week or a year ago. And now you're hearing this song for the first time. And I'm sitting here judging you like you are crazy, when really that would be the correct response, this dance, to hearing some song describe a nothing experience which you yourself had lived. I called that recognition the joke and began telling everyone at the bookstore where I worked that year the joke. I would approach Greg or Raphael or Jake or a crowded table in the break room and begin explaining. And it took a long time, the joke, setting up this hypothetical joke party, which would be intimate. Everyone knew each other, and Tom's Diner would come on the radio, and everyone would just register that it was a boring non-song, but one person, let's say Jameson, would stand abruptly and begin the whirling with the eyes. And of course, the partygoers, like the joke hearers themselves, say, what on earth, why, to this song? Something must be wrong with this dancing person we thought we knew. I would let that settle for a while, then push deeper into the joke. I'd say, let me change the frame for you. It is now somehow revealed in a perfect world through a film flashback that Jameson lived the experience Suzanne Vega is describing. The coffee, the corner, the diner, all of it. The man behind the counter, the rain, the girl outside the glass, like it happened to him and now he's hearing the song for the first time. You understand that you are wrong. You are the asshole. You judged him and now he's the one who's right and the only one behaving appropriately. Do you see? I would come home to Jameson and tell him whether Greg or Raphael or Jake actually understood. I would describe their responses to the Suzanne Vega joke, and we would nod our heads saying things like, that seems right. Yeah, he doesn't seem like someone who would. It's good that now we know for sure. I told strangers, called my mom, quit the bookstore, and moved in with someone else. And one day after that, I told a girl, Leah, the joke, and asked if she would let me perform it with Jameson at her stand-up comedy show. She reminded me that the Suzanne Vega joke was only very loosely a joke, but she said, yes, it would be fine. And if we could keep it under 5 minutes. I said yes, and we did. And Jameson danced behind me as I told the joke, standing on a bench in a dark, horrible bar in the East Village. And a crowd of about 30 people smiled or laughed, but still we couldn't know what they saw. We had added a part tacked on to the end called Living with the Suzanne Vega Joke. And it was where Jameson sits back down in the crowd, and I describe how deeply important I feel the joke to be, how I've been carrying it around person to person for many months, like some strange test. I explain that when I tell the joke each time, I am doing the dance. Whoever hears the joke is also the people at the party. How when I get to the end of the joke, I look into their eyes and determine how much was understood, how I'm trying to force a real revelation along with the hypothetical, how they should see my joke is appropriate, and how it's me, how I am the one in tune with the universe in such a startling way. Then last night, Jameson and I sat on my new back porch after so many months and decided something new, began to lay out what we would need. First is the dance. Second is the joke about doing the dance. Third is the live performance of the joke. Fourth is deciding a video representation must be made of the performance, and it must at least partially be set in a diner. So fifth is the conversation. Well, we would have to know him well enough to ask him, could we film this dance scene in your diner, like when it's closed and raining, and we bring in a lot of people just to act as your customers in your diner all night, because that is what we would ask of him. And a decade later, she texted me about the Suzanne Vega joke poem, and she was out getting drunk, and I was out too, but I'm sober now. And I asked her to send it to me because I couldn't find it in my email. And she stopped responding because she was having a good time somewhere, I thought. And we hadn't seen each other in months, as it happens now, whole months apart, casually. And I read a version of the poem from 2014 when we parted after breakfast at the train station. She had to go work on a review she was writing. I joked and said, don't go, as she ascended the stairs. I watched her and thought, I used to write all my poems about her, how she was the only thing for a while, for years, that seemed like what poetry was for. And I felt so sad that there had been other things since then. And when I read the poem, I remembered her dancing in the apartment, how my life really changed then, how I talked to her about how mine changed until hers did too, I think. And those years when I heard her singing in the closed bedroom, and days later, she heard me singing in mine, how we met late one night at the unsteady mirror in the horrible kitchen, having felt our way along the dark hall from the two ends of the apartment and realized we were wearing the exact same thing. How sometimes she was gone for weeks and I hoped someone was taking care of her, and how I knew most often he wasn't. How I wanted to be like her, how I was. Sometimes I only knew she was home when she'd come into my room and start reading a poem from one of the books she carried around under her arms, or a Leonard Cohen song started playing. How we can't keep track of each falling rock or robin. Or is he saying rock? No, it's Robin. So for years, I wrote these other poems and shook my head, unsure if it was poetry at all if she wasn't in it. How those poems were nothing like those 10 or 12 poems about her. When we lost the bag of weed, when we were so high we thought a bird was going to fly into the open window. How we thought we might have to kill the bird, which never came. When we smoked cigarettes, when she danced. How at the Christmas party, every member of her family sang with the total comfort of voices that know how to sing. And I followed her from room to room, and it sneaks up on you when there is no word for the kind of love, and the only thing you can think to call it is a joke. That's a Suzanne Vega joke poem. Thank you all. And that's what I'll be reading. I'm very excited to welcome our next reader. It's going to be Jack Underwood, a poet, a writer, a critic. He is the author of many wonderful books: Happiness, Soul of Her Masha Voice, A Year in the New Life. I think of Jack as a very accomplished poet and a teacher and collaborator with a very serious career, who also somehow has the bright, bubbling energy to just talk endlessly about cricket and London accents and pop music, and just generally knows and loves language so much. So I'm just very excited, Jack, to hear what you have for us.
Thank you, Courtney. Thanks for your wonderful reading. I'm going to have to, I haven't listened to Suzanne Vega in a long time, but I guess I'm going to have to now, and picture Jameson dancing and, so I don't know what I'm going to read, but what I do now is, because partly out of disorganization and partly out of spontaneity, I make a list of the kind of poems I'd want to read. So I'm going to read a long poem to get it out the way, and then a sad poem, a fun poem, a baby poem, because I've got quite a few of those, a second poem with babies or a baby or about babies, a death poem, a God poem, a poem about me, a poem about you, and then a final poem. So that's going to be how it's going to go. So I figured I've got one long one, but maybe I'll read it quite quickly, and I'll certainly set myself a timer so I don't read forever. Okay. This is called Sally and Rena. Sally and Rena are talking on the balcony of the Student Union building. They are in the second year of their respective degrees, Rena, English literature, Sally, English and American literature, and their friendship has deepened over the past few months since Michael, Sally's housemate, has been seeing Rena on a more regular basis, and Sally and Rena have found themselves in a more regular social contact. They've become close, but this closeness is still fresh with novelty. They're discussing a party that Rena left early with Michael the night before, and although Sally relays her anecdotes well and selects only notable and entertaining details from the time following Rena's departure, of which there were many, the party being particularly well attended and growing raucous largely towards the end, Rena cannot help but afford herself a moment of disconnect or abstraction, in which she almost hears Sally's voice reduced slightly in volume. And in this moment, Sally's face presents itself in a new way to Rena, not as her friend's face, but as a system of moving parts. It is at this point that Rena feels an impulse drawing forwards in her mind to punch Sally's face as hard as she can. The impulse hardens and shocks her. She worries that the shock of the thought has registered visibly on her own face, and she is relieved to find that Sally, who is still ably telling her anecdote, is oblivious to the violent impulse already rejected and repressed by her friend. Still, the shock of the impulse has distracted Rena. Why had this thought occurred? Rena clenches her fist a little as if to regain control of her body to make sure she can be certain she will not act upon the impulse. She likes Sally, she reassures herself. This is simply an irrational glitch. Rena, feeling reassured, is now ready to fully engage in the anecdote, confident that for the duration of her inward detour, she was appeared outwardly engaged and interested. She has said, "Really?" and also furrowed her brow. This frown was initially an outward response to her worrying inner concerns, but Rena, registering some confusion on Sally's face, since that passage of the anecdote did not especially warrant a frown, was able to pass it off as an expression of deep concentration, and so loosen her frown into a welcoming smile, as if she was satisfied that a certain detail she had been unsure about had found a pleasing resolution. However, as Rena tries now to re-engage with a renewed interest in Sally's story, in part motivated by a sense of guilt at her violent thought and the subsequent betrayal of her friend in feigning interest, she finds she has lost track of the anecdote, or has at least missed a crucial part of its structure or rhetorical arc, the crux, she fears, on which the meaning of the story depends. As Sally increases her enthusiasm at what must surely be the denouement, Rena feels a sense of panic drawing forwards in her, sensing that despite her best efforts to feign both surprise and comprehension, she will betray the fact that she has not been listening, and Sally will realize her efforts have been expended without hope or reward, and will probably doubt herself and her ability to tell an amusing anecdote, or worse, her friendship with Rena, who is only being further distracted by the sense of panic, that she will hurt her friend, that she will be thought of as disingenuous, that she is indeed a relatively disingenuous person compared to her friend, who in a matter of seconds will have a good grounds on which to base that poor opinion of her. And this panic, Rena feels, is now registering outwardly on her face. And though it is possible Sally will read this as anticipation, Rena doubts that she will do so for very long, as Sally's voice now seems entirely abstracted to Rena. Only her bright, expectant eyes are speaking, and when they stop speaking, what will Rena say? What can she possibly say? A sad poem. This doesn't narrow it down, really. Okay. Yeah, lots of sad poems, but I mean, maybe you won't find them so sad. Maybe you'll find them okay. Yeah, I'll read this poem, which is about struggling as a new parent, really, and the anxiety that it causes, and sort of just kind of trying to cope. It's called Behind the Face of Great White Shark. Glass of water in the dawn kitchen. Since we brought you home from the hospital, I have prayed these hours to a stub. Please, water. Please, glass. Great white shark, always sniffing out the small far blood, and all my murders and funerals out for revision. Mine circling the short grass like a bored dog. Keep your shit together. Picturing a perfect pentagon drawn freehand or fucking ambidextrously. Anything to blot the rat-gnawed forehead, worms correlating dark target areas. 2 weeks since the last great white attack, and cowdy custard in with the green beans. Are you struggling? I admit I have been sick since we met, pursuing this love wound like a moon beyond the windscreen. Morning leans across us like the shadow of a closing door. It's not your fault. Eat your banana. I can keep you safe inland. I can love you like an expert, my adamant hands, the voice I lower and lighten, my arm hair so alert as the shark turns its face again, no aspect to discern, no inclination or decision, just you reaching both arms up, distracting from the scent, the plume, the lesser work of living. I realized actually maybe that's a baby poem, so I've cheated. I'll have to read another sad one. And then you can have that as your first baby poem. Where is it? This is a poem that begins with a line stolen from somebody else's poem. I found that when I'd sort of mined my life for its feelings and interest, and I was out of juice, I had to start somewhere else. And so I started with lines of other people's poems. So this book, my second book, A Year in the New Life, has quite a few poems that begin with lines by other people, picked relatively at random, but also largely poems that were out of copyright to ease my permissions journey to publication. So this is a poem beginning with a line by Anna Seward. But oh, with pale and warring fires, decline the waking tasks if that's what you need. You don't have to compete with business. You don't have to compete with me, moving things from room to room, nurturing distraction. Shut the hillside behind you. Burn whichever forest. I can water the smoldering animals. If you need me to tie your hair back, I will learn to tie your hair back well. If you need me to pass this week over to the saints, I will guide them through orientation. If you are unsure what you want from life and include me in that confusion, I can still offer water, or else go back downstairs to sit and stir on your behalf this brilliant white emulsion. So a baby poem. I got used to having a baby, and then the baby changed into a different baby. And this proceeded to happen many times. The first baby was very small and didn't require very much, because it required loads, but it was stationary. And then the new baby had to like eat food, and you had to watch YouTube videos on choking, which are deeply distressing. And then like the poo changed, and then, it all just keeps happening. So this is a poem about encountering all those babies at once, which is of course what you do have to do as a parent, and it imagines them all at once. 15 babies in my garden, each at a different stage in their development, including a fully grown adult baby. All of them sitting around or lying or trying to turn over onto their fronts or back onto their backs, the sunshine apple-scented, the still trees monastic, as I carry a large tray of drinks out to them, different milks and different bottles I've sterilized, and for the adult baby, an old-fashioned in a tumbler, orange peel suspended in amber, a black cherry blot. Here you go, babies, I say, and they coo and squirm and gripe and sleep regress. What are you guys talking about, I ask, and the adult baby, being the best speaker among them, and therefore, I suppose, their designated spokesperson, replies, we were just talking about the ruinous and beautiful ways we're going to break your dumb old heart and totally fuck your life up. And they all start laughing. So that's one baby poem. Maybe I'll save one. I'm going to jump ahead and read a fun poem. And this is a poem that takes its title from the first line of an email I was sent. It was one of those phishing emails. And it combines two things really, sort of half, well, I don't know, we'll see. It combines guided meditation, YouTube videos, and also, spam emails, phishing emails. And this is the title, which was the first line of that email. My name is Zonal Coordinator. Listen to my voice happening inside you. Feel the way I pronounce these words, moving them through you like fruits of different sizes and shapes. Apricot. I'm going to move the word apricot to touch against your liver. Is that okay? Do you know where your liver is? Apricot. There, you found it. You are beginning to feel lighter. You are on a generic tropical beach. Your wisdom teeth are calm and happy. Your family forgives you. You are lava rising through the mantle of the world, oblivious to events upon its surface. Your friends like you. You are floating. My peregrine will guide you. See small adjustments to her wingtips. Nothing is holding you up now. The second digit of your security number has fallen far away. No one is cross with you. The world will return to its natural state of non-existence, but only when you do. Repeat after me. I'm feeling so good about myself. I'm feeling so good about myself. There, you see, it was fun, isn't it? A death poem. Go to the old book, got lots more death poems. This is after Akhmatova or Akhmatova, someone will know. I don't know the pronunciation. And it's called You Are Definitely, it's addressed to death. You are definitely coming, so why not now? Life is a frozen lamb. I'm waiting. I've turned off the lights and been dramatic, opening doors. Take any form you like. Why not come thumping great chunks off us, or cut our necks like bike locks, or creep into our bodies like a smell in the fridge, or surprise our throats like a tune from the morning radio that will notice we're singing the way you notice a police car pulling up the drive. I don't care how. The drains are gurgling. The sky is a reservoir of wrong-headed questions, and eyes that I love are losing their tournament. How are we doing for time here? Okay, not long. It was that long poem that did it. I shouldn't have read it. Okay, a God poem, and then a poem about me, and then a poem about you, maybe, to end. So this has got lots of gods in it. It's called Some Gods. Can you hear my neighbor on the phone in the background? No, that's good. She's the most on the phone woman in England. She's constantly on the phone, and we have no idea why she's so on the phone all the time. I mean, I like it. It's nice. She's still on the phone. She can't hear me. It's fine. Anyway, Some Gods. God with eagle's head and 5-pointed star insignia on palm of hands. God connected to 7 ivy drips with fire coming out of mouth. God made of warts. God with horse's legs and head of ram, reading names from a scroll pointing to a hole in the ground. God surrounded by representatives from the animal kingdom. God surrounded by representatives from the kingdom of global finance. God with cobbler's last and washing line with human faces pegged along. God with merciful expression holding knife and fork. God as a female infant. God with stomach as gumball machine. God as smiling coma patient between starchy cotton sheets surrounded by cards and flowers. God banging human skull gavel to silence a courtroom of lesser gods. God being led into a courtroom and asked to confirm holy name. God in fool's attire inviting you to play a game of rummy. God as bronze medalist forcing smile on podium. God as golden ball of light forming in your chest. God as a feeling of intense and sudden cold. God as a feeling of sudden loneliness. God as a cup in your house that you haven't yet recognized as God, but drink from nearly every day. God as a dead robin. God as the eye of a dead robin. God as your barely visible reflection in the eye of a dead robin. Okay, a poem about you, and then a poem about me to end. A poem about you. It's also about a dead dog. A man is dragging a dead dog on a lead down the street. It makes a low register hissing sound that is constant and gives you a sense of the weight of the dead dog. The lead is pulled tight to a straight line. It is attached to a collar, which is the point of the freight most forward, the dog's head having been pinned beneath its body as it moves along relatively slowly against the pavement, making that hissing sound. The rearmost point of the dead dog is what you might call, in this instance, its bottom leg, because the pelvis has been rotated, the dog twisted on its side, so one leg is in full contact with the ground, while the other is slightly elevated and wobbles. And since you already have a street in mind, and perhaps a breed of dog, a color of lead, or the kind of coat the man is wearing, why not become the man dragging a dead dog on a lead behind you? Why not try to understand this thing you are doing, how the dog came to be dead, and you came to be dragging it, what this means to you, and where it is that you are going. And I'll finish with a poem. Poem beginning with lines by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. But I could not hide my quickening inner life from those at watch. They saw a light at the window now and then. They had not set there. Who had set it there? Not me. I'm just a slug on the wet inner face of the discourse, chirpsing the wind. I've no idea what drags the chair, bruises the fruit, leads a child towards a dead rabbit and bids them not weep nor laugh but sing. My childhood neighbor recalled how I rode my bike down the hill beside our house and practiced my dying, lying still, arranging my body in the bushes. All summer I did it, repeating the drama, which is how a song is made. You make a phrase and turn it over and over like a dead rabbit, finding on the other side, oh look, this rabbit, dead too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jack. That was amazing. All those babies in the garden. I'll never stop thinking about them. Our next reader is going to be Jameson Fitzpatrick. She's a poet and an occasional critic. She's author of one of my favorite poetry collections, Pricks in the Tapestry from Birds, LLC. Some wonderful chapbooks. And she is a 2023 National Endowment for the Arts Creative Writing Fellow. And she just is poetry to me. They're indistinguishable. I met her at Marie Howe's workshop and just fell in love. And so I am as excited as I always am to hear you read, Jameson.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Thank you, Jack, for those poems. I am going to be reading a bunch of translations, twist. I'm working on a book called The Marschallin after the character in the opera Der Rosenkavalier. And in addition to voices that are original to me, there's a bunch of translations in it too. So I'm going to read some excerpts from the libretto of that opera, written by Hugo von Hofmannsthal, Austrian poet. I'm going to read some versions of fragments of Sappho's that have some thematic overlap, as hopefully you will be able to tell. And I'm going to read some translations of poems by Lotte Lehmann. Lotte Lehmann was a German opera singer, one of the great operatic sopranos of the early mid-20th century, and probably the most famous person to have played the role of the Marschallin in Rosenkavalier. And I'll just let you know whose poem you're hearing by telling you whose voice you're hearing at the start, something I stole from Courtney. Thank you, Courtney. Lotte Lehmann voice. I was skimming through old scores today when the past plunged into my present. Oh, prismatic beauty that was once mine. Oh, lot in life, restored in fleeting, otherworldly time. The joy of transforming. Who can fathom it who only lives one life, confined to the actual? Who never knows the sweet self-forgetting, the wasteful lavishing of the self in time, the ego dissolving itself in singing, in love and in suffering, floating as if on wings, an alien to one's own fate, floating on wings of song. Marschallin voice from Rosenkavalier. But can't I remember a girl, fresh cut from the convent, who was entered into the order of marriage? Where is she now? Right, look for last year's snow, so I say. But how can it be really that I was the diminutive Resi and will one day be the stooped one too? The old woman, the old field marshal's wife. There she goes again, old Princess Resi. How can that happen? How could God do that, where I am always the same? And if he has to do it like that, why let me look on with such a clear view? Why not hide it from me? It's a mystery, a great mystery, and our portion to endure it. And in the how lies all the difference. Sappho voice. Rest. The muses, perfumed with violet, brought gifts for the girls. Rest. And the clarifying lyre. Rest. Once supple skins gone dry. Rest. Like milk my hair has turned, my heart drags, my knees on which I used to leap and buck, now buckle. Daily I suffer this. What else could I do? No one can stop for decrepitude. And so it is said, Dawn, with her rosy wrists, rested, fine young Tithonus to the far reaches of the earth. But old age got him good and gray in the end. The license said he had to stick around anyway. Marschallin voice. My mood is already lifted. You know how I am. Half of May is merry, half of May is sad. I can't just command my thoughts. Was I afraid? A little, maybe, but I caught myself and said, it can't be. It won't stand. And if it had, Tavi, don't squeeze me. If you hold sand too tightly, it will run through your fingers. Please don't be like other men, the way of the field marshal and the baron. No, don't become them. Sappho voice. If you love us, go make your bed with a younger bride. For I wouldn't survive that you will survive me. Marshallin voice. Right now, I need to feel the weakness of all temporal things, right down to my heart. How one should hold on to nothing, how one can cling to nothing, how everything runs between the fingers. All that we grasp after comes apart, all dissolves into fog and dream. Time is the fundament, Ken. Time doesn't change course. Time is strange. You might live as though it's nothing. Then all of a sudden you feel nothing but around us and also within us. Into faces it trickles, in mirrors it trickles, between my temples it flows, and between me and you it flows, quiet as an hourglass. Oh, Ken, sometimes I can hear its implacable hiss. Sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and still all the clocks. Though one shouldn't fear time, she too is an image of God. Lotta Layman voice. Regret waits somewhere on the roadside, already stretching out her cold hand to you. But you don't see her. Your face is carefree, little girl. Envy overwhelms me that you don't heed my wisdom as you hurry carelessly to your misfortune. Sappho voice. No girl ever who doesn't yet shy from the sun will have the faintest of what I've learned. Lotta Layman voice. That must be greatness, the force of deepest solitude, to walk up there close to the stars, so high that all sounds of the earth become like a song of the waves, bringing an endless, wordless sough against the beach. That must be greatness, to feel the cool breath of the snow-capped mountains and know the hot life that glows down there in the valley, it never finds its way to me. Where is the force that will pull me up to the heights where only my longing reaches? The hands that hold me are called love, goodness. That must be a hard greatness, the force to break free from good and loving hands and be received into proud solitude. Marshallin voice. Today or tomorrow or the next day, didn't I tell myself? So it happens to every woman. Didn't I know? Didn't I vow to bear it with a steady heart, today or tomorrow or the next? The boy, how sheepishly he stands there in the middle. Was she so quick to love him? Her pallor offers the answer already. I promised to love him the right way, such that even his love for another I love, though I didn't think it would come upon me quite so soon. There are many things in the world you wouldn't believe to hear tell of them. Only those who experience believe and can't explain. The boy stands there, and I stand here, and with that new girl, he will be happy, insofar as men understand happiness. Sappho voice, and this is the one I'll close with. For the speech, sing of the bride's beautiful feet, and the violet-robed daughter of Zeus setting aside her violet-robed anger. Come graces, come muses, when songs the mind catch a clear tune. The groom annoying his attendants with talk of her hair, setting the lyre down. Dawn in golden sandals, in the chamber, the bride and her pornographic feet. You, the second to the right, are second to no star. Like a sweet gold apple high in a tree, blushing on the uppermost bough where the pickers have forgotten it. No, they remember, but could not reach. But he was swift as Achilles in plucking her. Like the hyacinth the shepherds trample to a purple pulp underfoot, longing, virginity of happiness. Thank you all so much.
Jameson, how dare you? That was great. Wow. Thank you for your reading. Next, we're going to have Elisa Gonzalez. She is a poet, essayist, and fiction writer. Her work appears in The New Yorker, The Paris Review, New York Times Magazine, The Drift, and elsewhere. She's a recipient of a 2020 Rona Jaffe Foundation Writers Award, and her debut collection of poetry, Grand Tour, will be coming later this year from FSG. And I don't know if I've been quite so excited about the debut of a book that's coming. So that'll be in September. And whenever I encounter something Elisa has written, I just have to brace myself because I have to prepare to become smarter. And, you know, by reading what she has written with her like signature care and just very fierce intelligence. So I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I love your work, and I'm so honestly, really, truly honored that you asked me to be a part of this reading. It's been so great. I'm going to start with a poem that I think of as my confession to the worst things about me. It's called Failed Essay on Privilege. I came from something popularly known as nothing, and in the coming, I got a lot. My parents didn't speak money, didn't speak college. Still, I went to Yale. For a while, I tried to condemn. I wrote, "Let me introduce you to evil." Still, I was a guest there. I made myself at home. And I know a fine shoe when I see one. And I know to be sincerely sorry for those people's problems. I know to want nothing more than it would be so nice to have. And I confess I'll never hate what I've been given as much as I wish I could. Still, I thought I, of all people, understood Aristotle, what is and isn't the good life, because, I wrote, privilege is an aggressive form of amnesia. I left a house with no heat. I left the habit of hunger. I left a room I shared with 7 brothers and sisters. I also left. Even the good is regrettable, or at least sometimes should be regretted. Yet to hate myself is not to absolve her. I paid so much for wisdom, and look at all of this. Look at all I have. This next poem is called To My 30-Year-Old Self. In 2 years, you'll forget how old you are. Subtract a year from yourself. That's age. That's hope. Someone will correct this error. You'll hate them. You excel at hating. You excel at untrammeled feelings, mostly ugly, though also generosity and sacrifice, which can at times make ugly things happen. I'm afraid I can't explain why you failed your younger versions, just as I've failed you, when we all agreed on the great project of our life, to write well. Not well, I can hear you thinking, to write perfectly. If I answer, that's impossible, that was never possible, you'll turn away, enraged at your own mind, another nightmare after another. It's like you're my sister. I still cherish you. A woman so relentless in stupidity and pursuit, like a dumb dog like you at 12 and 2 and 21. Remember writing that first story? It was terrible. Immediately, you wrote another. That's hope. I think I remember. We were 6. We had no judgment, only promise. This next poem is called Tornado in August. I grew up in Ohio and there were sometimes tornadoes, green skies. Tornado in August. Disasters are coming to us here, but we don't acknowledge this ever, my mother and I. I talk about God while she hangs up fresh washed linens and delicate items to dry. Her pale pink brasiers swing open like the breasts of women nursing children. She has many children, of whom I am the oldest, stricken now with a harsh cough and the guilt that comes from knowing my mother is drying clothes for me that I no longer wear, only put in the laundry every 2 weeks or so, just so she thinks I like that sweater. And now those white sweaters and white sheets hung out on the line spin because the drying tree spins as I used to spin, and everything is as I used to do. Now we're going from Ohio all the way to Europe. This is called Traveling Show. The first section takes place in Berlin. The apartment of a Croatian couple, husband and wife, both in love with our friend M, a professional flautist, long-fingered and heron-legged. They've gone to Zagreb to witness a mother's death. For the duration, my husband and I walk their mutt, Street Boy, in Tempelhof Field. My husband hates Street Boy. Street Boy retaliates. Street Boy pees on our pillows. I forgive Street Boy without hesitation. I pity Street Boy as I pity anyone entrusted to my care. If I were virtuous, Street Boy's bladder would last the 5 flights and 3 blocks to Tempelhof. My husband reminisces about when he lived here a decade ago. One winter dark so insistently that on the first day of real spring sun, he wept. Yet, he maintains he was happy then. He keeps describing happiness as Street Boy lunges for a bicycle and almost dies, which wouldn't have been my fault, truly, however much it felt like it. All my husband's happiness lives in the past. And this, the afterlife, paradise is a club in Mitte where I've never danced. The couple returns, they pay us in drugs for our trouble. It turns out it was the husband's mother. It turns out Street Boy's name is Stribor. How apt, I think. A shared hallucination of a name is a good description of marriage. But it means surprisingly little to set word to action, if you even manage it. Like, once in Manhattan, we slid dollar store rings onto each other's fingers as the officiant barked, "Look at each other, don't you know what you're doing? Okay, now say it." Part 2 takes place in Warsaw. An apartment whose 6 windows overlook a courtyard polluted with crows against whom the residents wage war. Their infantry, realistic simulacra, metal murders perched on balconies, blank iron eyes, awake when I wake to the morning's gray hours. By lunch, the fake crows look ludicrous. I mock their sentinel stares. I take the side of reality. My husband talks about the evolution and peculiarities of corvidae, these oscine passerine birds. They're so smart, he says. Crows, one of the few animals, counting humans, with object permanence. The drama of crow versus sham crow acquires novelistic proportions. In the evenings, we read novels in separate rooms or in the same room, and it makes no difference, a compression that would interest me if it were someone else's loneliness. Thoughts I'd once have mentioned, at least, the man in the chair opposite, my husband, it seems, who is subsiding, who does subside into his mind over the course of a long, smogged winter. The air, sometimes so toxic we cancel drinks with friends for the sake of everyone's lungs, though he still smokes and we still drink. In fact, we even discover vodka, albeit poured in small goblets and sipped. When we do go out, it's to a bar called In the Fumes of the Absurd, if translated literally, where I reject the symbolism I still reject. On the night train from Gdańsk. On the night train from Gdańsk, before I learned that in Krakow someone I loved did not kill himself because I am on the night train from Gdańsk, I wander the carriages hunting an open seat, at last settling for the corridor's cold floor. It's a cold October outside this rumbling and screaming contraption where I'm quick to shift aside for the blonde nun I disappoint by saying, "No, I don't know where the toilet is or if it has paper," and where I jump up at the conductor's brusque "Pani proszę." He cups his hand like my father, beckoning for me to surrender whatever small thing I loved. But this man needs a second-class ticket to validate my seat on the floor, my back against the cold wall, my hair tangled on a screw. On my knees, I prop the selfishness of others. Przepraszam, I say to everyone angry at my body's inconvenience, everyone who passes, including the nun who returns, rubbing germs between her palms. Forgive me that I have a body, a thought I've had many times. My father, who hated my body, asks me to stand. No, it's the conductor talking again, as if we're new to each other, as I've greeted people whose nakedness I regretted touching. Forgive the weakness of the mind confronting the shames of the body. I thank the conductor. I cover my face with the selfishness of others. I close my eyes. This is before. I am telling a story of before. Before I learned to purchase first-class tickets, to choose trains from this millennium, not this creaking and wailing artifact, where an old woman wraps the conductor's shin with her cane as she berates him for the lurch, the crush, assigning him sole responsibility for all of Poland's trains, which he refuses. Forgive me for the sins of others. That's not something people say if they can help it. This is before again. Before the nun disembarking at a town I recall only as fluorescence and the screech of brakes gives me her window seat for nothing I have done. The world becomes perfect and its repetition of vanishing, flash of light and dark again and again, signs of people I'll never meet. Many years before I arrived in Poland, I pictured myself wandering alone away from my father's house, not realizing I was a child and children are the most hopeful narcissists, that wandering happens alongside others. What else didn't I know? That I would love places glimpsed through dirty glass, that now fondly I think of the couple splitting a ham sandwich, mayonnaise smeared beside me, and how suspiciously they regarded my hands. That I'd love that stupid sandwich, the dry, overheated air, the blushing ugliness of faces such as mine. The windows chill against my cheek, even that despite its comfort. The conductor who once again checks my ticket. When I was young, I believed that one loves only what deserves love. Forgive me, Father, I said, that I am hateful. Glow of towns with names invisible passed by in a wheezing and roaring beast. Memory of childhood is a history of error. So I think on the night train from Gdańsk to Krakow, believing I am experienced enough in the daedal web of selfishness and love to pack the book away. Forgive me, he said, for even thinking about it. I thought about it before I thought about you finding my dead body. What else could I do but thank him? What else don't I know I've been spared? By others, by the faults of memory. The conductor taps my shoulder, and the sandwich eaters call out in Polish, then English to wake me. Zapraszam, this is your station. Down the platform, a dark-haired stranger approaches, listening to her own music, ticket in hand. Did she take my place? I've wondered since. I wondered, forgive me, even as he was talking, confessing as much as he thought I could bear. Two more short poems. These are set in Cyprus, very different weather and climatic environment. Cyprus. A rare thunderstorm. Bougainvillea riots outside the window. Rains blue diamonds, a stunted lemon tree. Then a series of words replete with definition. Just yesterday, I still believed I could tell the story someone else longed for. It's rained twice in a month. Miracle, people say. I came to this island begging for everything. A classic error of love, yes, I am aware. To be convinced one knows what the word encloses. Yesterday, cursing his children, the neighbor cut down branch after branch of trumpet flowers. They fell on our side of the wall. Osmosis, xylem, mesophyll. So the water rises. And there go the blossoms, panicking across the garden. This last poem is called Notes Toward an Elegy. The Cypriot sun is impatient, a woman undressed who can't spare the time to dress, so light, like a vitrine, holds even a storm. One day in the old city, a pineapple rain, and I'm on my way home from the pharmacy carrying my little bag of cures. Refuge at the cafe in the nameless square. Mihal brings espresso poured over ice, turns off the music. We listen to rain fall through the light until the end. White wine greening in a glass. Lion rampant in the sky. Moon reclined gorgeous in her silver shift. Polished newels, door askew in its frame. Hot mornings, hot apple tea honeyed, the mountains of fist knuckled on the horizon. Dust is coming, dust is not yet here. Whenever her hands dance, I tell her how beautiful. She says there's so much other movement I do not perceive, and I accept the presence of dances invisible to me. Figs in the tree, figs on the stones, stains of rotting fruit spread in shadow at the sun's whim. That steady dissolution of body into form that signals the progress of a masterpiece. Copper bowl in her hands, in the bowl in the hands, olive leaves burn. I ask her to read to me. I like the way her voice handles words. What will she read? First she laughs. It's a good day to laugh, the coffee is strong and the light. Why read when we can talk, when all our friends are here? My perversity is silence, a shudder stopped in the throat. When all the time I hear her voice, I am glad my soul met your soul. Examples of what I do not know. It's just that for a time I took love out walking with me everywhere. And sometimes I thought, child, who's this child? When it played in the square, a sunshine creature, terrifying. Yet still I looked at it like I've never looked at a stranger who promises water to the waterless for nothing. And now I lie awake pretending everyone in the world lies still the way the living are still. Not entirely, never entirely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I can't wait for your book. And yeah, for everyone's reading, that was just wonderful.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you. Elisa, Courtney, Jack, Jameson. What an amazing Wednesday. Thanks to you all for joining us. Tomorrow on Zoom, if you're free, we have a conversation with Rescue Press. Next Wednesday, we have a reading curated by Nicole Payrafit. It's called A Flock of Poets Reading Avian Works, if anybody wants to come. And yeah, let's see, we'll throw open the mics. Everybody can say hello and goodbye as you leave. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Courtney.
That was
Thank
amazing.
Thank you, Elisa.
Everyone.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Thank you.
Good nurture.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
See you all. Thanks.
Yes.
Have an amazing Wednesday, y'all.